No, not yet.
Hello, internet. What are you? You're just giggling away there.
I just was on Blue Sky and I saw your thing saying now, and I was like, now, like literally now, like the theme music is playing. Will I finish typing this? And
Yes,
as it went,
yes,
pew,
it's
on the
actually
final,
going.
pew. Hello, welcome to the Ramblecast. Yay! We're not in the Netherlands.
Just this week though. Next week I will
this
be
week.
in the Netherlands again. I will be.
None of us is in the Netherlands.
Yes, no, but next Thursday I will be speaking at Voxed Days in Amsterdam.
How lovely!
Yes,
I was. Yes, I have just returned from 8 days. I've returned from a trip to the Netherlands that was long enough that when I opened Signal on my desktop computer when I got home, and it tried to catch up on 8 days worth of group chat messages, it sat there for an hour and then died.
yes,
So,
it'll do that off that
yeah,
group chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they need to do something better with it. But no, it was great. I went to Veenendaal, which is at the Veenendaal is like if every country was required to have Woking.
Okay.
Veenendaal is exactly how the Netherlands would have Woking. It's a sort of quiet town with a little city center with some nice little restaurants, and then around that there's a lot of houses, and around the houses there's industrial parks, and around the industrial parks there are just fields,
Yes,
and the occasional wind farm, and quite a lot of chickens, and that's it as far as I can work out.
You have very accurately described my current hometown.
Yeah.
It is exactly. I mean, it is Woking. So, you know,
yes,
that's probably why.
And it must, yeah.
I have traffic jams out my front door and rolling fields and farms out of my back door. It is very strange suburb living.
It was. I did chuckle because I've been to quite a lot of places in the Netherlands, and you sort of don't realize until you're chatting to someone like, yeah, I've been, Rotterdam a couple of times. Amsterdam, obviously, Utrecht many times. Yeah, Eindhoven, a couple of things there. I've been to Breda, I've never been to Groningen or the northern part, never been north of Amsterdam. But I've been to a place called Appledorn, and Appledorn is very quiet. I had some friends who lived there, one of whom used to live in London, and said Appledorn is the quietest place you've ever seen in your life. Like
Oh.
if they took its pulse, they'd declare it was dead. And then I was chatting to some of the people in one of my workshop groups, and one of them said, without a trace of irony, I'm thinking of I'm moving to Appledorn because there's more going on than Veenendaal. And
Yes.
I sort of stifled a giggle and then had to message somebody and say, you'll never believe what I just heard. But
So, when I was in Utrecht at Future Tech, yes, and I was chatting to a guy called Sander over dinner, and he was from a place that was near a place that was kind of east of Utrecht a bit.
Yeah.
And there is a town/village that is so quaint, like literally just looks like a chocolate box, that there are actually signs in Chinese on the houses telling them that this is not a living museum and you can't just go into people's houses and sit down. And the only reason for having those signs is that was happening. I mean, I think it was tourists generally, but I think Chinese tourists in particular, because there's much less ability to read general signage and everything. We're just kind of going, oh, it's one of those model villages, and just going in to see how people used to live in past times with 42-inch plasma screens.
I did once the record for the greatest number of alphabets that I have seen in a single day, like just not like looking in books and stuff, was I flew from St. Petersburg to Tel Aviv in 2018. And so St. Petersburg has all the signage there is in Russian, and lots of it is also in English, and quite a lot of it is also in Chinese, because for whatever reason, it is very popular with large groups of Chinese tourists. And then flew from there to Israel, where the signage is a combination of mostly Hebrew, but there's quite a lot of Arabic around as well. And I was like, that's 5 alphabets in one day.
That is a lot of alphabets
in one day. That's kind of cool. Yeah. That's probably the day I thought I should write a talk about text encoding. So.
Yeah. I would be very jealous. Actually, that's a thing, text encoding.
Yeah.
That I was kind of muttering about this morning just before, whilst doing work, because I do work, because I have a job. Yay! I am, and yes, it's kind of make stuff faster and that sort of thing, and scale better and whatever, and there's a disconnect between the stuff that you think everyone knows by now, because it's like been a thing for ages, and then actual, I mean, talented programmers, but still, and in this particular case, it's .NET strings, because .NET string, the string type, is UTF-16, which means each char is 2 bytes. And so it's a short. And so if you have a UTF-8 string, which is basically just bytes, and you want to convert that to a char string, then there's no quick way of doing that. You have to interpolate zeros into all of those bytes just to pad them out to be the UTF-16 character. So you can't do it. It's never going to be a zero copy, because you have to copy all this data, and you have to do it in a very slow way. So, and what you want to do in this case is you have received a 1 gigabyte blob file that is split into lines that are about 1 megabyte each. And what you want to do is just pop it open and find the new lines and put each of those lines onto a separate queue so that they can be processed individually. And because it's JSON, and if you're not kind of all clued up on the performance stuff and you haven't seen me ranting about it or come to my workshop or plug, you kind of go, oh, well, there's a stream and there's a stream reader, and stream reader has a read line async method, and that will read the line and return me the string, and then I can pass that off as another message. And yet the overhead of doing that versus just going, here's the stream, read the bytes, then send the bytes to somewhere else without that intermediate step of converting them to an internal string representation. And yeah, I'm rewriting day one of my workshop because there's things that you assume people know, and I'm just going to slow down and make sure that they do.
Could
That's the thing.
Do a thing where you have a stream zipper which takes 2 input streams, and it takes a byte from that one and a byte from that one, a byte from that one, that one, this, you, that one, and just chung, 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 and that's the output stream.
You could. I'm not sure why you would.
Because that gets you the padding. So you got one stream which is all zeros.
But the padding is always so yeah. But you don't need a stream then. It's just a hard coded zero. So I think the closest you can get is that I think there's a CPU instruction on Intel AMD 64 where you can say that little patch of memory there, I want you to cast effectively, so widen the bytes to be 16 bits instead of 8. But yeah, and I don't think that instruction exists on ARM either, although I'm prepared to be corrected. But ARM's, it's the whole RISC thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yes, no, it's just, I think we occupy a weird space. Because most of the people we interact with on a regular basis outside of day jobs are the smartest people. We've skewed the pool. We have sample bias, very, very bad sample bias, and so we assume everyone is kind of like these MVP, cutting edge, very, very interested, continuous self-improvement kind of
think
people,
honestly the only
not
thing is curiosity. I think that's what drives it, is that a lot of the folks we know are people who, when something's weird, they don't get angry and they don't give up. They just go, I'm going to figure out why that happened.
Yes.
And we'll pull things apart. And Eli says they saw friends from school the other day and realized they've forgotten how to talk to people that aren't software engineers. Yeah.
Yes. I've made a new friend recently, and she's an engineering manager. And so we are at least speaking the same vague language. When I say things, she knows what I mean. When she says things, I know what she means. And yes. Because it is very difficult to speak to people who are not software engineers.
It's very easy to speak to people who aren't software engineers unless they want to talk to you about software.
Well, yes,
because I have this perennial thing when people are like, "What do you do?" and I'm like, "Computers," and they're like, "What kind of computers?" and I'm like, "What level would you like me to answer that question for you?"
Yes,
and yeah.
It's tempting to lie, actually, when people ask what you do. When I was a stand-up, you do not tell people that you do stand-up for it. You just don't, because you get, oh, go on then, make me laugh. To which, if I sort of felt comfortable enough with the person, I would grab them by the throat and look menacing and just say, laugh. I've misjudged.
On me. I'm chuckling. So
yes, I've misjudged that a couple of times. Or here's one for you. You can use this, and then they proceed to tell you the most racist, misogynist, just worst joke. And so I would tell people with a completely straight face that I was a cat wrangler in the movie industry, and that it was much harder work than the dog people, and I was currently working on a movie which had a cat and a dog, and the dog wrangler had no idea. And I had a whole thing. I would just go off on this whole bit about the plight of the cat wrangler.
The combination of humor and professions has reminded me of a joke that I think is quite a good joke. And there's a gentleman is driving through the countryside one evening at speed, and happens to pass a police officer who's standing at the end of one of those humped bridges with a radar gun, and snaps him coming over and woo, with the lights, and pulls the guy over, and he's like, he's like, yes, officer, I know I was going too fast. And so, all right, we need to take down a couple of particulars, license, registration. What's your profession, sir? And he says, I'm a rectum stretcher. It's like, you're a what now? He's like, yeah, it's the folks come into we have a little clinic down in the town, and we'll start out normal, and over a couple of weeks we'll stretch their rectums. And the officer's like, you stretch their rectums? And he's like, yeah, sometimes we'll get them out to 5 or 6 feet. And the officer says, well, what exactly do you do with a 6-foot rectum? He says, we give it a radar gun and stand it on a bridge. Hello, welcome to Tech Bugs and Rock and Roll, a weekly podcast where we tell terrible jokes and ramble about things. So,
and the police do a marvelous job, by the way, of keeping us all safe and slow.
Well, I am not currently murdered, so I think we have the police to thank for that.
Yes.
Definitely,
because there's a lot of murderers out there who would almost certainly have murdered us by now if it
was
weren't
not
for the
police. Definitely, we would be all murdered. So
yes.
Your comment about fundamentals and people who reminded me of something I wanted to talk about this week that I think is very interesting to me, which is. So I've been going down, doing a whole bunch of research and putting some sessions together about basic modern web development stuff.
Modern web development.
Yes, because I learned to write web pages in the 1990s when we didn't have any idea what any of us was doing.
No.
And I had Netscape and Internet Explorer, and I've been building web apps for my entire career, but I realized along the way you develop a sort of a toolbox of techniques that you apply when you have to solve certain problems. And so my idea of what a browser is capable of doing kind of levels out at the point where, browsers got pretty good, and then I'm like, well, now they have jQuery, and I used jQuery for a long time, and then I discovered that most of what jQuery can do, browsers can do by themselves now, so you don't really need that. And recently, I went down this rabbit hole of looking at all the new stuff that browsers can do. And like a lot of the stuff that we used to have to reach for something like Sass or Less or a CSS preprocessor, like, no, we got variables and calculations in CSS now in the browser, so you don't need a preprocessor. And HTML has all these new tags, like it's got dialogue, so you can do modal dialogues in HTML without needing to write any JavaScript and without needing to figure out the overlay div that returns false when you click on it, and prevent default and all that kind of stuff. And so you just you plug in all of the thing, and you're like, dialogue show modal, there it is, okay. And form HTML forms, method equals get, method equals post, and that was literally it for like 25 years. And now there's method equals dialogue, and that means that it'll close the dialogue that the form is on. And you're like,
and submit?
No, it'll just close the dialogue. And then the form.showDialog method returns the result of what you clicked on the form. But because it's all part of the DOM, you can see all the things on the form.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And so you can pop up like a settings dialog. So what I've been doing is building a couple of demos where it's like a web page with a settings button, and you click the settings, and it's like, slide this to change the border radius of everything on the page, and pick a font from the drop down and use color pickers for the background, and then it calculates a contrasting foreground based on the background and all this kind of stuff. And it's just this sort of really interesting exercise in, like, if you were starting from scratch now, how much stuff that we've learned along the way you just could skip it completely because it's totally irrelevant.
Absolutely.
Like how do I display a dialog box with jQuery?
More to the point, all those people who learned how to do a dialogue with jQuery or Bootstrap or whatever before it was added. I wonder how many web developers follow any kind of feed or social media account or YouTube channel that kind of go, or caniuse.com or whatever. Hey, there's a new feature.
So I
'cause
think
I think it's less than 50%.
yeah, I think it's probably less than 20%, and I
Yes.
think there is a very good reason for that,
Oh.
which is so HTML. They published HTML5 as a numbered specification,
Yep.
and basically said this is HTML5, and when your browser does all of these things properly, you're allowed to write HTML5 on it, and up until then, you're not. And of course, some browsers were already way ahead of that for some features and way behind for others. And then the World Wide Web Consortium gave up and they said, well, actually, we're not going to publish specs anymore. The Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group, or what? WG? Whatwig? I don't know how people who do that for a job pronounce it. I'm going to call it Whatwig, because
I think they should call it Whatwig, because
Whatwig, Whatwig with a wh.
Whatwig.
So Whatwig. And they had always published we know that the World Wide Web Consortium told us what HTML is supposed to do, but we're going to maintain a document that tells you what HTML actually does. Apparently, I have to stop saying HTML so many times because HTML is giving Edge Effect HTML parody earworms. So we could call it Hotmeal or Hootmeal or Hotmeal. Anyway, so basically they went, you know what, we're not going to write a spec anymore. The Whatwig are going to maintain a living spec, a living standard. And so what this means is that when new things get added to HTML, that's not like a news event. It's like a sort of 6-month smear of here are some proposals for a thing, and then we've agreed this is probably the best one. And then after a couple of days, if you enable support in Chrome using a feature flag on the Canary build, you can start doing it. And then there's a point where it's in Edge now, and then there's now it works in Safari on iOS. And so there isn't any point where it's like today, yes, this is the day when this thing becomes new. And it's just like they're not there. And then, it's like kind of driving through town and going, oh, I don't remember that being an office block.
Yes.
And you're like, well, it wasn't really an office block. 2 weeks ago.
It was the hospital where you were born.
It was, you remember when it was something different.
Yes.
But and you sort of vaguely remind, I guess I did see them knocking some stuff down. And then, there was a big hole. I remember the big hole. And then you remember, there was scaffolding and concrete and stuff. And at some point you're like, they've wrapped it in glass, I guess. And then you realize that it's not actually going to open as an office building for another 6 months because they haven't put in the internet and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's kind of like that. And so I think the combination of the fact that there is no longer hey, HTML6, here's what's new. It's like, nah, it's this constantly evolving thing.
Yes.
And there isn't really there isn't a day when all the people on YouTube go, oh, this will be a great topic for this week's video.
But see, that's the thing is how are people supposed to know? It's like, if you don't know that, you don't know what you don't know. It's the unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
And so of course, it's one of those things where you go, I know modern web development. And then you turn up to somebody's modern web development course and you kind of go, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, can you do that?
So I am going to challenge one thing you said there, which is people do not turn up to modern web development courses because they think they know it, because obviously they know HTML because that's what they told their boss.
Well,
and something that I have been struggling with for a couple of years now is how do you sell people something that they don't know they need to know because they don't know it?
Yes.
It's easy to sell distributed systems because lots of people are like, oh, everyone's talking about that and I don't know what that is. But, it's a market share thing, I guess. But
so speaking of modern web development, Next.js.
Yes.
That was fun.
I don't want to talk about Next.js.
Why don't you want to talk about Next.js?
Because I have recently inherited a Next.js code base that has been disowned by the people who built it, that I have somehow ended up responsible for hosting it while having absolutely zero interest in getting any more involved in how it works than I absolutely have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
What they had some sort of
a
thing, didn't they?
CVE,
Yeah.
a critical vulnerability
Yeah.
E.
Yeah.
E for exposure.
Critical vulnerability. There will now be a brief pause while we look up what CVE stands for.
But anyway,
common vulnerabilities and exposures.
Common vulnerabilities and exposures, and so there was a numbered one of them for Next.js, and you're sort of more used to. I mean, CVEs are for things like OpenSSL and the thing that was in SSH, the libzip or whatever it was, that was in SSH that a Microsoft just. But yeah, when you're getting CVEs in JavaScript front-end frameworks or whatever they are, what is Next.js anyway? It's like it's a meta framework around React or something, isn't it?
Let's ask. I'm going to ask ChatGPT, and I'm going to read the answer in a silly voice.
Oh, that sounds like an excellent idea.
What is Next.js? Reasoning.
No, it isn't.
Next.js is an open source React framework that makes it simpler to build fast and scalable web applications. Developed by Vercel, it adds key features on top of React, such as hybrid rendering, file-based routing, API routes, built-in optimizations, developer experience.
No.
Overall, Next.js streamlines many aspects of the development process for React applications. Yeah. That did not tell me anything at all that doesn't sound like bollocks.
Also, apparently, a way to introduce critical vulnerabilities into React.js applications, because the CVE was specifically Next.js and not React.
Yes.
And I just think it's quite impressive to be able to have like a CVE against your little JavaScript library that runs in a sandbox. I mean, that's like the point. That's the thing that the JavaScript people, the Node people, are always saying. Oh, well, one of the good things about Node is that it automatically runs in V8 sandbox, so it can't access the rest of your machine.
Except if you want it to talk to anything remotely important, like your database or your file system or your cloud buckets, you have to put them in the sandbox too.
So I didn't actually sort of click any of the links and go and read what the CVE was or how it worked or whether it was being actively exploited.
I did. I was on Eurostar traveling home from the Netherlands yesterday.
Oh, well, I was that bored.
It's that thing. One of the things I put on the list to talk about this week is train Wi-Fi and how train Wi-Fi is worse than no Wi-Fi.
Yes.
And I was trying to sort of keep up. And I did see a very interesting thing by someone talking about how Next.js claims to be an open source React framework, but actually if you're not running it on Vercel's own infrastructure, there's a lot of things that don't work quite right. And so it's for an open source library, it is still very tightly coupled. Surly says German train Wi-Fi is flawless. It is, except I couldn't possibly say anything about why the public IP address block used by Deutsche Bahn has been blocked by Outlook.com for injecting SMTP messages. Can't possibly comment. Like, I know that nothing to do with me, officer.
No, so, absolutely not. Were you doing your email talk in Germany?
I was trying to desperately find somewhere. I was trying for about a week. I was trying every Wi-Fi network I got that would let me see if I could use it to inject SMTP into Outlook.com because I needed a screenshot of the error messages.
Yes.
Eli says, laughing my ass off like the Anvil framework. Let's talk about anvils and let's talk about frameworks and let's talk about the picture you have in your head when you think about a framework. And now let's think about the picture you have in your head when you think about an anvil, which, let's face it, has probably just landed on Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah, I was going to say Wile E. Coyote or Tom from Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
Was the anvil frequenter with his head.
Yeah.
But I'm not familiar with the Anvil framework. I'm guessing it's
other than a terrible name for a framework
because it's Eli and they do Python.
Yeah.
It's a tool
Yeah.
for making tools, so it is fitting and also puts them at the top of most alphabetical lists of sponsors. Yes, this is why my next company will be called.
So actually, let's just I'm just going to bring up an ASCII table here and use it to choose a company name, because you presumably want one that sorts before the earliest characters, and the earliest printable character in ASCII is, well, space is 32, exclamation mark is 33.
Right.
So there you go. You want to be right at the beginning of the list. You want a company called exclamation mark something.
So Crunch Bang Linux had it right.
Yes.
Yes. No, hang on. Bang Crunch Linux would have probably still survived to this day. It would have been higher up the lists. Crunch Bang obviously too far down. But no, I once wrote a system that this is very, very, very far in the before halfway through the 90s, the first half of the 90s, and there was this double entry thing going on where you had, so one person entered a record and then another person entered the record to say to confirm, and then only if both records, and for some reason, and I cannot remember exactly why, but you had like partially formed records, and null meant something. So null meant nobody's done it, and then there was the kind of somebody's done it but we're waiting for the second one, but the record still has to exist. And so they settled on using \7 or ASCII 7 to put, which is the bell character. And it's kind of like, because that will never appear in text, and you're like, nothing before space will ever you can use any of those first 31 characters.
Yes.
The advantage of using any of those 31 characters except for bell is that when I'm debugging and displaying this bloody data to my screen, because it would literally just put 7 bell characters in a field on the screen, and your terminal would just go beep, 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 and then display the thing because it thought it was a sodding teletype.
Yeah.
And so it was just doing the best it could.
It is. I always thought it was interesting that the ASCII 28, 29, 30, and 31 are file separator, group separator, record separator, and unit separator.
Yeah.
And in a world where we still cannot agree on what you should do if there are commas in the data that you want to comma separate, I'm like, we've got record and group separators. They're built in. They've been there the whole time. But because you can't see them in a spreadsheet, they will never, ever catch on.
So we have to use commas.
So we have to use commas.
Which are not, yes. Stephen has very correctly pointed out that new line is printable.
No, it's not.
Well, it's an instruction, isn't it?
Yeah, but it doesn't print anything. It just moves the paper.
It changes text.
That's not printable.
We're obviously having to account for the possibility that somebody would just put an empty...
I am going to say this on the record right now. If you create a company whose official name starts with a new line because you want to be at the beginning of the alphabetical list, I am going to find you, and I'm going to come to your house with some golf clubs, and we're going to have a conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
Not about
because it's all fun and games until someone says, can you import all our sponsors from this CSV file? And you're like, there's this blank line. We can't. No, that's part of their name.
Yes.
Yes.
So don't do it.
Don't do that. That would be a terrible idea.
Do that.
You're welcome to use record separator. That would be fine.
So am I to understand, by the way, from the trailer, that you are listening to Adrian Tchaikovsky's latest book?
Yes.
Read by Sophie Aldred?
Yes.
Yes. Me too.
Yes.
What are the chances? I mean, actually, it's kind of Audible goes, oh, look, there's a new Adrian Tchaikovsky, and it's read by... So the worst Doctor Who's companion.
I have not watched anything like enough Doctor Who to even be qualified to be the other half of this conversation.
Well, I will just lay it out there for you. So the worst Doctor Who was Sylvester McCoy.
Yes.
Mainly because it just went very, very silly and could have been on at 5 o'clock on any given weekday because it was just very childish. And Doctor Who, when it's done right, manages to be sort of okay for children, who, as long as they don't mind being scared, but also entertaining. And it just stopped being entertaining to adults. One of the baddies was Bertie Bassett. There was a baddie who was made of licorice all sorts. And Sophie Aldridge played his companion, who was called Ace.
So when you said the worst Doctor Who's companion, you didn't mean the worst companion. You meant the companion of the worst Doctor Who.
It's actually both.
Both.
And it's not, the thing is, it's not Sophie Aldridge's fault. There were writers, and that's the buck must stop somewhere in that room. She delivered the lines that she was given with verve and aplomb, let us say.
Yes.
But then I'm not sure. I don't think her career really survived it. I know she's done a lot of the sort of audio Doctor Who stuff. And Sylvester McCoy has done a bunch of those as well. But yes, and now she reads Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And again, there's bits of it where she does it really, really well. And then there's bits of it that you shouldn't be reading aloud.
Yeah. No, I sort of, at first I was a little, the reason I'm listening to it is because I did not take any, I've been away for like over a week, and I didn't take anything with me that I want like reading on, but I have an Audible subscription. And so I was like, there's a new Tchaikovsky book. So Eli has put in the comment somewhere, and it just flew past. The man writes books faster than I can read. What is he doing? Adrian Tchaikovsky is an infinite number of spiders at an infinite number of typewriters. This is canon.
Actually, I read genetically modified spiders.
I did listen to a very good interview he did. There's a podcast where this person interviews science fiction writers, and he said, I don't think I actually write any faster than any other writer. I just think a much higher percentage of what I write ends up on the printed page. Because it sounds like he is quite good at writing content and copy that the editors just go, yeah, that's fine, and the publishers are like, all right, well, we got it now. Let's get this one out. But yes, he does crank out about half a dozen novels every year, and it's terrifying.
He's the opposite of Brandon Sanderson
or George R.R. Martin.
Well, George R.R. Martin got distracted by the vast rooms full of nothing but money that he now owns. And I think Brandon Sanderson is probably doing all right as well. But Brandon Sanderson, Adrian Tchaikovsky obviously doesn't need editing. Brandon Sanderson desperately needs editing. Like a copy editor should just be going sentence by sentence. It should be like a Google Doc with live share turned on. Because the man, he can tell a story. He can spin a yarn. He cannot write a sentence. I
have never read any of Brandon Sanderson's work.
I challenge you to just pick any of them at random on Amazon, do the look inside thing to read a sample, and a dozen sentences, you'll be broken. It's the worst. It causes me, I can't read it. It causes me physical pain.
I am going to do exactly that right now.
Interesting. This is a conversation that is had repeatedly in r/Brandon Sanderson.
So what have I got? I've got the Mistborn trilogy. I've got Oathbringer, the Stormlight Archive, book 3.
That one.
Just
that one at random.
Let me read a sample.
This is fair use, YouTube.
Yes, I'm going to share less than 10%.
We are critiquing. Eli says Warbreaker is so bad.
All right, so 6 years ago, Esh and I had always told her sister that she was certain something wonderful lay over the next hill. Then one day she'd crested a hill and found humans. She'd always imagined humans, as sung of in the songs, as dark, formless monsters. Instead, they were wonderful, bizarre creatures. They spoke with no discernible rhythm. They wore clothing more vibrant than carapace, but couldn't grow their own armor. They were so terrified of the storms that even when traveling, they hid inside vehicles. Most remarkably, they had only one form. Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
not.
Like,
It's not.
I'm curious as to what is going on, but yeah.
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 So anytime Brandon Sanderson does something and people go, "Oh, that's really good," I'm kind of like, "Oh, I hope Netflix option it." And I believe it was him who took when George R.R. Martin's predecessor, Robert Jordan, passed on without having completed the Wheel of Time.
Yes.
And Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan's son, I think, finished it together.
Eli says, "Have you heard about Biochroma?" I have not heard about Biochroma.
No, tell more about Biochroma, Eli.
And while we wait for Biochroma to appear in the chat, yes, no, Sophie Aldred and reading, and yeah, I was like, oh, I want to read that, but I didn't bring a Kindle or anything with me, and so it's on Audible, and it's that thing where, like, at first I was like, I'm not sure that the characterization, and I was like, actually, it does. Once you get into the story a little bit, I think the portray, it's first person perspective written by a female protagonist.
Yes.
Which is, I'm guessing, why he didn't just read it himself like he tends to do for his audiobooks.
Yes.
And yeah, and I absolutely agree with you, is that most of it works very, very well, but then there are some interludes and there are passages from somebody else's perspective, without giving too much away, that kind of, I if it was me, I'd have got a different actor to do those parts, the way that the Discworld novels have Bill Nye doing the footnotes or something.
Yes. Yeah. And maybe just introduce sound effects instead of making the narrator go which, I'm not kidding, listeners, is a thing that happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes obviously in the book it's like written down however it's being spelled, kind of 5 or 6 times.
I actually like that.
She reads it.
I like that because I thought it did a great job of being as nonsensical as that element of the story clearly is to the extraterrestrials who can't make sense of what the humans are broadcasting.
Yes.
I actually thought it did a pretty good job of, that would be like listening to a human going, and you're like, all right, yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Edge Effect in the chat is giving his age away. I believe Sophie Aldred did a damn good job on Jackanory once. Although Jackanory, I think, went on much longer than I think it did. I think it actually, because I'm sure I've seen a clip of Tom Hiddleston.
It's probably still going.
It is probably still going on CBeebies or somewhere like that. I really hope it is, because
it ended in 96.
Oh,
yeah.
But no, Jackanory was lovely because it was just a celebrity reading a book on the telly, and they would like show the pictures from the book on the screen while the celebrity was reading, and that was it. That was all it was. It was the cheapest possible adaptation of the source material. Let's just get Bernard Cribbins to read it. It was a more innocent time.
Yes.
Before these modern kids with their Transformers and their whatever else modern kids have, skibbity toilets,
TikToks,
and TikToks. Yes. Yeah. Although I believe TikTok does actually, that there are people kind of just book talk, this like a chunk of TikTok that is actually quite literary. I do have kids. Eli's pointing out that I have kids, like maybe I'd forgotten or something. Although I have kid now, because one of them is adult, which is weird.
That's called success. You've completed parenthood level 1.
Yes. Yeah. One of them did not die. So yes.
What else have we got on our list of things to ramble about?
Captain America: Brave New World. I don't even know how. I'm not even sure how long it's been out for.
Yeah,
I think it might have been out. I think it might already have been out the last time we did the podcast together, because we had a couple of weeks with stunt people.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
No.
No. And it's like, this is Captain America is supposed to be like one of the tentpole bits of the franchise, and I just don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care.
So I hit the point. There was a wonderful little cinema not far from where I live in Catford. And the Catford Muse Cinema was they took what would have been like another derelict boarded up shop for 8 years until they finally got around to demolishing the building. And they got what's called a meanwhile lease, which is basically you get to use this building for cheap while you understand it has no future and you won't be here forever.
Snatched away from you at any moment.
And they did a great job of, turning the whole place into a really, really nice little cinema with 3 screens and everything. And then there was some dispute between the council and the landowner and the company that runs it, and it just closed. They just closed the door, and there was this sort of vicious online, oh no, you didn't, they did that, and them coming back with, the reason why our cinema lost money is because apparently Lewisham Council told every drug addict in Catford to come and use our toilets, but they wouldn't pay for us to have any security. So we had to pay for security, and they said they didn't need public toilets because there were some in the cinema. And then they turned around and went, no, that's got nothing to do with it. You hadn't paid your rent for 6 years. And they said, that's because you told us we didn't have to, because we've got this signed contract with you from the COVID Business Reparation Fund. And they turned around and went, yeah, but that money was to fix the ceiling. And they're like, no, you were supposed to. And it all got very stupid.
Yes.
So, but it basically shut down like the cinema where we used to go and see films.
Right. So you just don't go now.
So now I'm just like, what it means is that instead of being like a 10-minute walk down the road and a pint in the pub and then a nice little movie in the cheap cinema with the good snacks, it's like, we could go up to Everyman Crystal Palace and live, but it just kind of it takes effort. So, but then I saw today the preview for Doomsday. Have you seen this one yet?
No.
It is absolutely wonderful.
Is it really?
It is just a very, very slow pan across a long row of film director chairs with the names of all the actors on the backs of all the chairs.
Oh, yes.
You're like, okay. And it gets to the end, and the last one is Robert Downey Jr.
Yes.
And he sat in his chair in a suit, and he just gets up and looks at the row seats and just has a little chuckle and walks off. And it says Doomsday, now in production.
Yes.
And
with Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom.
As Dr. Doom.
Which, yes, because this is the thing it's so somebody in the chat said gave up after Endgame because it crossed the turning out. So Eli. But I liked Endgame. I cried twice during Endgame. And then it was kind of like that. It was this huge event. I mean, it was like the culmination of 23 movies over whatever it was, 12 years.
I'm actually needing to look up the cinematic timeline.
Because... And then they released Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which was just very mid.
So Shang-Chi, I think I watched on a plane.
Yeah.
Eternals, Spider-Man Far From Home.
That was good.
No, which was the one with all the spiders, man? That was No Way Home.
No Way Home.
I loved that. I thought that was brilliant.
That was really good.
And then the Doctor Strange one that Sam Raimi did was brilliant and fantastic. And Thor: Love and Thunder was just stupid.
Yep. But it's not a universe anymore. I think that's the thing, is I don't care about, they haven't established an arc. Well, they did. They were trying to establish an arc with Kang the Conqueror, and then the dude they had playing Kang the Conqueror turned out to be the most problematic person of that particular month. And so then they had to scrap that, which is why Robert Downey Jr. is coming back as Doctor Doom, and the Fantastic Four are starting off with the Thing stuff. Yes, Origami Marie says Spider-Verse was good, which is absolutely 100% true. And I think now it does canonically exist within
Yeah.
MCU because of the whole multiverse thing. They are excellent, and the animation on them is absolutely exquisite, and the story's
Yeah.
really good as well. And it's Miles Morales Spider-Man,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is cool. But yeah, it's so like I will go to the cinema to see Thunderbolts, which is the one with like Florence Pugh as Yelena, and David Thingy from Stranger Things
Harbour.
as David Harbour as
Yeah.
the Red Dynamo or whatever he was called. But yeah, I it's kind of like it's on a film by film basis. I'm no longer just going, oh, new Marvel dropped, must go see.
Yeah. Yes, I
And,
think it has. Yeah,
yes,
the Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings was the first one that I was like, I sort of realized afterwards there had been a new Marvel film that I hadn't seen. And
yes. Sorry,
yes,
my phone's going ping because my cousin's having a meltdown.
somebody is sending you ASCII code 7s is what's happening.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
it, isn't it? But yes. So there we go. So, apologies to the podcast listeners for the pings that RX Elements almost certainly won't remove.
It will.
Probably. Yes.
I have been scrolling a Trello board for about 5 minutes now going, where's today's show? And I've just realized it's the wrong Trello board. It's not the one with the podcast on it. It's a completely different one. Brain is hard. Yeah, let's talk. Did you folks talk about vibe coding last week?
I think we sort of talked about it briefly, but yeah, no, ew.
Yeah,
ew.
yeah.
There was just somebody had a post on Blue Sky of a couple of sort of screen grabs of tweets from the other place, and they were 2 days apart. And the first one was, I've brought my SaaS product to market and scaled it to $10,000 a month, and I haven't written a line of code. It was all just vibe coding and blah, 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 blah. And then 2 days later, help, I am under attack and I don't understand any of the code, so I don't know what's actually wrong with the thing. And yeah, that was hilarious to me. The other thing we did discuss last week was the person who said to their co-pilot, please write this code, and it went, no, you do it, which was hilarious. It was hilarious enough that it is actually worth mentioning on 2 podcasts on the trot.
That is the first thing I have ever heard that makes me think that we may be approaching artificial general intelligence.
Yes.
Because if you go to any intelligent, sentient being anywhere in this universe and say, can you make me a training shoe, like if each of the 50 states was a shoe, the first question would be why, and the second question would be, how much are you going to pay me for doing this for you?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because, intelligence begets curiosity about motives and reward.
Yes.
So, but no, this whole it is still baffling to me how much, like, are there that many people who do not appreciate at all how software works?
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you must at some point during your long and varied career have been approached by a drunk person at an event, like a wedding or something.
That was David Whitney.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, apart from David Whitney. But no, the drunk person at the event who's been told that you work in computers and they've got an idea for a website and all they need you to do is build it and they'll give you 1%.
Yeah, many times.
Yeah, and those are the kind of people who are now going, oh, I don't even need a programmer. I can just vibe code my brilliant idea for an app or a website, and then bad things happen.
Well, I hope the bad things happen quickly to the right people and are sort of bad enough that they actually act as a deterrent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you met people?
Yes, I have.
It's not looking good, is it?
No, it's not. It really isn't. I'm trying to think now what the dumbest thing anyone. I had one once, a long time ago. Somebody wanted me to build an application that was it was a dating app based on car license plates.
What?
Where, like, basically, if you were driving to work every morning, you would note down the license plate number of everyone you fancied. And then if anyone like matched your number with your license plate with their license plate, then it would connect your accounts and you could see who they were.
That is,
And I'm
that
pretty
person
sure
hadn't thought that through even for like 10 seconds, surely. That's kind
yeah. Yeah.
But-
Yeah.
So
I've had
related to
all sorts of
driving
stuff.
and AI, though, I did have an epiphany. So why is it that for programming and writing and all these different things that we can be doing at any given point, we now have co-pilots who sort of sit there and they can help and they can offer suggestions and all this sort of thing. But for driving, where the idea of having a co-pilot, if you look at like World Rally Championship and stuff, is an existing thing. They go, oh no, fully self-driving cars or nothing. Because there's a lot of stuff that you're supposed to do as a driver that a lot of drivers don't do. And so if you're using your car's built-in sat-nav or CarPlay, Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever, that can talk. The car knows where you're going and it knows the route. And so the car, and it knows where it is. And so the car could go, oh, we're turning right at this roundabout. I'll do the indicating because this driver doesn't know how. And I'm not going to call out a particular brand of car because, yes, there are some that are famous for this, but there's drivers of all cars. And then, get furiously angry with you when you pull out because you thought they were going straight on and then they're not and stuff. And yeah, you're just kind of like, why can't the AI just shut up and know where they're going and just sort of look after the additional things and let a human being worry about whether they're going to run into a young mother with a pram or 15 old age pensioners getting off a coach.
Pretty sure it's because if they deployed that feature on, let's choose a car brand at random, completely at random, BMW, they would be inundated with people going, hello, I was driving my BMW and this green arrow started flashing. I think it's a warning light. What does it mean?
Well, yes.
And they'd have to put a bit of tape over the indicator lights on the dashboard so as not to upset the drivers.
I think that would be a learning moment for everyone, though. So, yes. Chat is saying, Eli's saying there's a video of a Tesla completely failing to understand the concept of a train and thinking it was cars, which I haven't seen.
I've got a video clip somewhere of a Tesla autopilot that is behind a truck that is transporting traffic lights and is going into a total meltdown because it has no idea what to do.
Yes.
And I rented a car in Norway last year that would automatically slow down when it saw speed limit signs, which was kind of clever until you realized that it also slowed down because there was a car in front of us with a big number 30 written on the back of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought the speed limit was 53 miles per hour because I was following
Herbie.
But no, Mark. Lots of people in chat are mentioning the latest Mark Rober video.
Yeah.
So he essentially did a Roadrunner wall where he painted the road on a wall, and this was specifically Tesla, and Tesla's most self-driving cars use LiDAR, which is kind of like bouncing light off stuff, and the same way the Kinect worked effectively.
Yeah.
Tesla's famously only use optical cameras. Like they have enough of them that they can build a 3D representation. But it built a 3D representation of the road that included the wall, and it drove straight into it. And yeah, I mean, it's not like a real world scenario.
Yeah.
But it did remind me of a scene from The Amazing World of Gumball, where there's a part of a car park where it's got a big sort of poster up saying new car park opening soon, that looks like the new car park that's soon going to be open, and he drives into it multiple times. If you haven't seen The Amazing World of Gumball, it is actually, it's hilarious. It's very much worth a bit of your time.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes,
Cool.
what's happening with your down in .africa?
Oh, I got the thing saying you need to renew this domain, and I was like, I guess I do. And I'm like, I'm sure I could do something with that domain, but I don't know what. So it's just going to sit there playing the Toto video on repeat for another year.
Yes.
I did have the idea I had was I could gather 365 different covers of Africa by Toto and have it post a different cover every day.
Yes.
Yeah. But that sounds like a lot of effort. So, So
I bought a new thing just before we go, which I will. I haven't had a chance to try it yet because it was plugged in and charging. But because it's all been tech. Well, this is tech and rock and roll. So yes, I have new wireless headphones, and this little thing here. And it's so Positive Grid, who do sort of all the practice amps and that kind of stuff. They've basically built their practice amp into headphones.
Oh, nice.
And they're Bluetooth headphones, and they support multi-device. So they've got a dedicated thing for talking to the thing that plugs into your guitar.
Yes.
And then they can also connect to Bluetooth, so I can connect it to my computer's Bluetooth. And then I can just sit there. Because I don't know about you, but it is very difficult to get comfortable when you're sitting down playing something and you've got a cable and you're sort of like trying to run it over your back, but it keeps dropping down your shoulder and all that sort of stuff. And so when somebody went 190 quid wireless, I was just kind of like, oh yes, finally, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll let you know. I plugged it in and twanged the bass briefly, and it does the B string. So
sweet.
Yes, it's promising so far. Also, it's Positive Grid. Everything's this Spark brand, and there is a really, really good app actually that you put on your phone and you pair it over Bluetooth, and you can switch between amps, and you can put effects pedals in the chain and fuzz and distortion and all this sort of thing, and then just play along with it. So yeah,
cool.
Looking forward to playing with that.
All right.
I will get people sending us stuff just to play with for free. If I talk about stuff enough, then yes. Yes, Surly Dev has found ibless.thereins.downin.africa.
Yeah,
the best internet URL ever. It's definitely up there. So. All right then.
Right. Thank you for tuning in, folks. You all have a good week out there. You're back in the Netherlands next week, aren't you?
I am back in the Netherlands next week, and I think I am. No, I'm not speaking at precisely the moment, but I will probably be too busy. So stunt Rendell again next week.
Very good. All right. See you next week, folks.
Cheers, everyone. Take care.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.